Good morning. Convening our Friday, January 31st, 2025, 8:30 a.m. agenda here in the Committee on Public Safety. Happy Aloha Friday, everyone. I hope you all stay dry and safe over the last evening. Members, we have an agenda, not too full, but then we do have a 10 a.m. agenda. I want to go over just some ground rules as I look for my ground rules. For those of you who may be with us on Zoom, please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is complete. The Zoom chat function will allow you to chat with technical staff only. Please use the chat only for technical issues. Do we have anyone on Zoom at the moment? Okay. If you are disconnected unexpectedly because of the weather and problems we've been having over the last few days, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. In the event of a network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision-making. In that case, an appropriate notice members will be posted. Also, for those of you on Zoom, please avoid using any trademark or copyrighted images. And I know that this group will refrain from any profanity or uncivil behavior. We can agree to disagree, and we can do it with aloha. Any profanity or uncivil behavior may be grounds to be removed from the hearing, but I hope we do not have to cross that line. Members, first up, House Bill 1062 relating to the Air National Guard. This really is a housekeeping measure to sort of align the titles, and all that sort. So first up, we have testimony in support, Major General Stephen Logan or his representative.
Good morning, Chair Bellotti, Vice Chair Umoto, and committee members. Colonel Nagatani representing Major General Logan. We stand on the testimony that we submitted. I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay, we have testimony also in support. Are you Major General Joseph Harris?
Yes.
The Hawaii Air National Guard,
Yes.
okay. And testimony in support from Terry Heedy. Okay. Members, any questions? I have a question just because it was raised by our HMSO drafter. There's language in here that says it allows the Hawaii Air National Guard to hold the rank authorized by the Department of Air Force, which is currently the Major General, but there doesn't appear to be HR language in the bill itself. Does it need to be there, that language about that provision?
I do not believe so. The Major General Harris is currently in the Chief of Staff position. I don't believe the bill will require that.
Okay. I think this might just be a technical
Okay.
issue, but we might want to take a look at that later.
Okay.
Members, any other questions? Any other testifiers? Oh, I should have asked any other testifiers. And I know that there weren't any testifiers by Zoom. Did anyone come in? All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks.
Next up, relating to Hawaii National Guard, House Bill 674, authorizing the payment of allowances for TRICARE dental program and vision coverage to all officers, warrant officers, and enlisted personnel of the Hawaii National Guard ordered to active duty for more than 30 days. Members, we have testimony in support. Again, representative from Department of Defense, Major General Stephen Logan, Adjutant General, or his representative.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, esteemed members of the committee. I'm Brigadier General Ross, Director of Joint Staff for the Hawaii National Guard, and representing Major General Logan and the Department of Defense. We stand on our testimony as written. Any questions?
We'll ask questions for later. Individual Terry Heedy in support. Anyone else in the room to testify? Anyone in Zoom to testify? None. Members, questions? No questions for me. All right, that's easy.
Thank you, Chair.
Let's move on. House Bill 652, relating to veterans' rights and benefits. This regulates persons receiving compensation for providing advice or assistance regarding veterans' benefits. First up, we have Veterans of Foreign Wars, Department of Hawaii. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Bellotti, Vice Chair Iwamoto, and members of the committee. My name is Jamie Shadell from the Veterans of Foreign Wars Department of Hawaii. We're also going to stand on our written testimony this morning in strong support. What you're going to see today is a lot of testimony and strong opposition. And working in this building, in and out of this building for the past 2 decades, I've learned that it's either a really bad bill or entities probably are going to lose a lot of money. They're also going to fail to tell you that their practices are illegal under federal law and that there are no other options for veterans. There are options. There's statistics in our testimony that showed that our organization, through federal fiscal year 2024, serves over 2,000 of our veterans in Hawaii, and that amounted to about $60 million in veterans benefits. Pending any questions, we'll stand on our testimony this morning, Chair.
Thank you. We have testimony in opposition from the National Association for Veterans Rights, Ashley Berry, via Zoom.
Yes, thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is
Sorry,
Ashley
can
Berry,
we-
Senior Vice President
I'm sorry, can
of
we pause?
Communications for the National Association for
can we
Veteran
pause?
Rights. Veteran suicide.
There's nothing on the video. Our TV's not on. Sorry, Ms. Berry, can you just hold on? There is no video. We're going to take a short recess to fix this technical error. Ms. Berry, just stay on, please. Thank you. Agenda for Committee on Public Safety. Thank you, Ms. Berry, for holding tight. Go ahead.
Yes, I was just saying that, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify. Veteran suicide remains a national crisis, often linked to delays and obstacles in accessing earned benefits. And as a former television journalist and senior executive at the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, I've seen firsthand how a complex claim system leads to homelessness, financial hardship, tragic outcomes for veterans. House Bill 652, while well-intended, I would say, further restricts access to assistance, limiting veterans' ability to choose qualified professionals who can really help navigate this bureaucratic process. The numbers are alarming. Hawaii has over 107,000 veterans, but only 30 VSO representatives, leaving more than 3,500 veterans per one representative, and over 43% of claims are pending for more than 4 months. So these delays are not mere inconveniences, they can really be life-threatening. The VA is overwhelmed, we know this. Limiting expert guidance outside the VA's accreditation system creates more barriers, leaving veterans without critical support and really increasing the risk of suicide. We cannot afford that risk. I've seen it firsthand. It's just tragic. So I appreciate your time and urge the committee to consider solutions that really truly serve our veterans and give them a choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. Please stay on for potential questions. We have testimony, written testimony only in opposition from the Veterans Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. We also have testimony in opposition from the Veteran Benefits Guide, Mr. Josh Smith. And we have testimony in opposition from an individual, Ms. Terry Heedy. Members, or excuse me, any other testifiers in the audience? Any other testifiers via Zoom? I believe there might be someone there. Go ahead, please identify yourself.
Yes, it's Ray Colas, Chairwoman Capella, members of the committee. My name is Ray Colas, and I am here on behalf of Veteran Benefits Guide to testify in opposition to House Bill 652 as currently written. Now, Veteran Benefits Guide provides veterans with a private, legal, and fully federally compliant service outside of Veteran Affairs, helping to ensure that veterans receive the benefits that they have earned. Now, Veteran Benefits Guide strongly supports Representative Hashim's commitment to protecting our veterans, but unfortunately, the bill prohibits our services we provide as an honorable for-profit company. And it is our concern that it's not our concern that we're going to lose money, as was stated by one of the prior testifiers, but that the veterans will lose a much needed service, the services that we provide. We support many of the protections that this bill puts in place, but we cannot agree to a prohibition on our services. We have reached out to Representative Hashem to express these concerns and look forward to our continued conversations, but do oppose the bill as currently written. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colas. Again, any other testifiers in the room? Seeing none, members' questions. Representative Iwamoto.
Yes, I guess this is, sorry, this is, it's kind of confusing when the people who drafted this or put this bill forward are not in the room. But, oh, so you worked on this bill? Okay, please, sir, come
So
forward.
coming forward is the representative from Veterans of Foreign Wars.
Okay. Thank you so much. So there are a lot of nonprofit organizations that are actually considered legal entities. And I'm not sure if VFW is such an organization. Are you a nonprofit organization?
We're a federally chartered veteran service organization and a nonprofit under 501c19.
Oh, okay. So you are a legal entity as well. But there are a lot of nonprofit organizations who've been receiving funding to provide outreach and to let veterans know of services that are available to them. And so they would be considered legal entities under this definition of person. And so obviously, I mean, so there are individual people who are getting paid as outreach workers to do this work. So because they're getting paid, because there's a nonprofit receiving money to make sure your fellow veterans know about services, would they be restricted under this bill?
We're supportive of considering, there was a suggested amendment and testimony in support of another measure in the Senate that the previous testifier submitted testimony in support of. If the nonprofit organization follows VA accreditation guidelines and doesn't receive compensation, we're willing to accept an amendment to the bill to allow a nonprofit not receiving compensation from the veteran to offer services on their behalf. Certainly, there's more than a veteran service organization that can provide that service as long as they follow federal law. And not necessarily Veterans Benefit Guide, I'm not familiar with them, but from my basic research of them, they generally fall under federal compliance. I'm not sure how their model works, but they were supportive of our Senate, one of our Senate vehicles. But we prefer this one because it has a clear connection to existing federal law, but an exception for an entity like them that doesn't receive compensation, we'd be open to that.
Thank you.
It's Scheidel. Okay. In your testimony, there's veteran service organizations, and then there's accredited veteran service officers. Under what authorities are veteran services officers accredited?
They're accredited by the Department of Veterans Affairs, by the federal government.
Okay, so any veteran service organizations organized under other laws, state laws, they can hire accredited veteran service officers, and those are the officers who are required to comply with these laws that you cite in your testimony.
Absolutely, and they have to comply with HIPAA. They have to have their get documents notarized so that they can do these services on behalf of the veteran. It's a legal relationship that the veteran service officer has with the veteran because they're handling sensitive information.
Now, is your veteran service organization also accredited by the Department of Veterans Affairs?
The actual officers are accredited, so we put forward the names of individuals that are volunteering to do this service, this job, and then they go to training that's accredited by the Department of Veterans Affairs, and then they have to pass testing, and then they, I believe there's a bonding requirement too, and then and only then do they get accredited by the VA.
So accredited veteran service officers get bonded?
I believe they do have to get bonded. I'm not 100%. I have to get back to you on that.
Okay, and then just in the, in this landscape, are there other states that regulate these veteran service organizations that seek compensation in this manner?
To the best of my knowledge, there are 6 states that have passed legislation, and 44 states' attorneys general have submitted a statement in support of legislation having enforceable standards at the state level because there's no criminal violations on the federal level, criminal or civil violations at the
And what
federal
are
level.
those 6 states that have also passed regulations?
The first one is New Jersey. I can get you back with that list of states.
Okay, and then when you say that the 44 AGs have submitted statements in support of having enforceable safeguards at the state level or the federal level?
State level.
State level. They submitted statements of support to who?
I can provide you with the letter.
Okay, and then you cite in your testimony the Guard VA Act. What is that?
That was a proposal that was before the last Congress that didn't move at all. It was to put the civil and criminal violations back into the federal law.
And these are civil and criminal regulations for all veteran service organizations,
Anybody providing
individuals.
benefit services, for lack of a better description. The laws are on the books. They're just unenforceable. It's clear as black and white of what an individual has to do to provide this service to a veteran.
Okay. But the federal laws that you're citing to us say individuals, which is a different term of art, I would imagine, than persons. And that's the challenge we're having. Because you can have individual human beings, right? And then the broad language of this bill would regulate persons, which we know is a broader entity, right? Okay, thanks, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm not an attorney, so but I am familiar with we can figure out the correct term for
Okay.
that. And then there were also some amendments that the AG's office had provided to the Senate in the Senate companion that we're also supportive of.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Scheidel.
Chairwoman Capella, will I have an opportunity to answer some of your questions?
Yes, we're going to call the next testifiers, or I have some more questions for other members. Members, any other questions? Okay, you can have a seat. Or do you have a question of this testifier?
No. I have a question for the officers. Thank you, Chair. Seated. I was wondering, as people in your position, and you might not be familiar with the bill because you're here to testify for another bill, but hearing the discussion, I just wanted to get your take in your broad level. Do you see a problem with abuse and veterans being taken advantage of in these types of services? I'm sorry?
Sir, if you want to comment, please come up and comment and respond, and just identify yourself.
Good morning. My name is John P. Alamoden, Director for the State Office of Veteran Services, State of Hawaii Department of Defense. Representation, per your question, yes, veterans, as others who are engaged in agencies or entities for support, there can always be potential for exploitation. What we're aware of in terms of specific to the veterans we serve, if there are particular claims, for example, that require legal support, and if these claims then result in potential disability compensation because of a particular VA rating, we are aware that of some legal representation may state in terms of a percentage of what is received should a judgment in terms of a claim is successful. So we are aware of those instances occurring, and so potentially can be exploitive to the veteran if he or she is not knowing how to proceed in that manner.
All right, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Follow-up question from Rep. Iwamoto.
Sorry, sir, thank you so much. Are there any pro bono legal services? Because I imagine the reason why they went to an attorney to seek assistance is because they knew they had a claim, something wasn't right, and so the only person they could seek was somebody who had, a law office to support. But so that's how they do their fee, and obviously there are attorneys who lose a lot of cases, and then so they count on winning one. But as somebody who's worked for Volunteer Legal Services Hawaii, are there specific nonprofit or pro bono services available to veterans who have a claim and who can get free services so there isn't that exploitive model that you're referring to?
Vice Chair Iwamoto, yes, there are two particular legal counsels that I am aware of that do it pro bono. So yes, there are, per your question.
Mr. Colas, I do have questions for you. So if you can turn your camera on. In your testimony, you make a distinction, or you say that Veterans Benefits Guide would welcome the opportunity to become accredited with the VA but cannot. Are you talking about your organization becoming accredited, and under what authority is that accreditation occur?
Yeah, so I want to clarify that. Accreditation is meant for currently, as current federal law is written. You're required to be accredited if you're going to represent the veteran before the Veteran Affairs or provide legal services. I want to make clear that we do not provide those services. The services we provide takes place before a veteran needs to be presented before the VA or need any legal services. So I want to create that separate distinction so that we're no longer confused as to who needs to be accredited and who does not. So going to the comment you just made, the statement that we would welcome accreditation, that is if federal law were to change to allow those who provide services similar to ours would also be inclusive within the accreditation requirement, which does not exist today.
Okay, on that note, so I imagine that is determined by federal law.
That's correct.
And is there any federal laws moving that would open up that opportunity for accreditation for organizations like yours?
That is something that is currently being worked on.
Is there a bill in Congress currently or has been introduced?
Because this is a new Congress, it is being worked on. It hasn't been introduced yet.
Okay, has any bills been introduced in the past? And I'm sorry, I keep pressing.
Yeah.
There has been?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware of any states that have the kind of regulation being proposed in this bill?
So we are aware that there are several states that want to put protection surrounding veterans who are receiving services from for-profit organizations, all of which we support. The nuance within the bill before you is a prohibition on our services, as opposed to separating the good from the bad. And that is the only reason why we are opposed.
Okay. The previous testifier, or two testifiers ago, stated that there were 6 states that had laws on the books similar to this and mentioned New Jersey. Are you aware of what the other 5 states might be?
I don't believe that there are 5 states. From the research that we have conducted and with our involvement in the issues, we are aware of New Jersey, we are aware of Maine and Massachusetts, Maine and New York. And I also want to add, in all 3 of those states, there is a pending lawsuit.
Okay. All right, members, any other questions? All right, seeing none, we can go on. Thank you for the great conversation and information from our testifiers. We are going to now move to House Bill 1058 relating to veteran services. This would establish the Veteran Cemetery Board within the Office of Veteran Services of the Department of Defense to provide veteran cemeteries in the state with guidance, education, technical assistance, and other support to ensure compliance with standards set by the National Cemetery Administration of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. First up, we have Representative for Major General Stephen Logan, Department of Defense. In support, and I believe that would be Mr. Almoden, Director of the Hawaii Office of Veteran Services.
Again, aloha Chair Bellotti, Vice Chair Iwamoto, and members of the committee. I again am John P. Alamoden, Director, Office of Veteran Services, State of Hawaii Department of Defense. The Office of Veteran Services, OVS, provided written testimony and stand in support of House Bill 1058, subject to any questions.
All right. We'll take questions. I'm sure there will be some, so just hang on.
Yes.
We have Terry Heedy in support. Any other testifiers in the room? Any testifiers via Zoom? Okay, members, any questions? I don't. Nope, no questions for me, actually. All right. Seeing no questions, we'll move on to House Bill 503, relating to Hawaii First Responders Memorial, appropriates funds to the Department of Accounting and General Services to hire a consultant to evaluate potential locations and designs for the Hawaii First Responders Memorial. Members' testimony first up in support from Department of Accounting and General Services, Keith Regan, or his representative.
Aloha, Gordon Wood for the Department of Accounting and General Services. The department stands on its written testimony in support of this measure. I'm available for any questions you may have. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. We have testimony in support from Jason Pablo, County of Kauai Fire Department. Written testimony only. Testimony in support from City and County of Honolulu, Managing Director Mike Formby. Testimony in support from Councilmember Radiant Cordero. Testimony in support from UPW Hawaii. Testimony in support from individual Eddie Fujioka. Members, any questions? I have a quick question for Mr. Wood.
Yes, ma'am.
Who are the members of the working group?
Okay, I was afraid you were going to ask that question as I was sitting here. And I can't answer the question right now because there's almost 24 people on the working group. Representatives from all of the first responder organizations from all the counties, as well as a private first responder organization. And then we also have 2 new members who are representing families of fallen first responders.
And then is there a timeline that, I mean, I know you folks have only had literally 2 meetings, maybe a third one in January?
No, we have had only 2 meetings and then a sort of a tour of other memorials in the Capital District area.
Okay. What is the timeline for construction? If you have any timeline?
Okay, we don't have a timeline yet. The working group is basically still in an organizational mode at this point, and we need to identify what kind of memorial they want to have erected, where it should be, and come up with a budget for it, and all of these other steps that need to go before we can come up with a schedule for when construction might start.
And then the consultant will also help with those kinds of like plotting out the milestones.
At this point, we're looking for a consultant to help with site selection, if you will, identifying and evaluating different sites. It may be the same consultant going forward, or we may hire a different consultant depending on the requirements.
Okay, and then is there any ballpark range of the money that's being requested? Because it's blank in the bill.
It is, and I know we suggested a figure to Representative Ichiyama, but I forget what that is, and I will get back to the committee on that.
Okay, if you could provide that information to me. We're not going to do decision-making on this until the end of our 10 a.m. agenda, so if you can get that information to me, and then we can put that into the budget, that would be helpful.
I will certainly try to do that, yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wood.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Would this committee consider doing a living memorial? I think about all the other memorials that are in this in our downtown area,
Yes.
and so many of them are so passive. But when I think about first responders, I think about people who are active, and I think about children on playgrounds, developing the coordination and the muscle dexterity to become first responders one day. I just don't know if it would be, if it's ever been done before, but an amazing playground that children can use and develop these skill sets could be an amazing memorial concept.
I think that's an exciting idea and something that the working group should certainly discuss. If you'd like to join us in one of the working group meetings, I can certainly send you an invitation.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Wood. Again, just for the testifiers here, my plan is to do decision-making at the end of the 10 a.m. agenda, so there's no need for you to stay. We just have one more bill on the agenda, but you are welcome to stay to listen to the rest of this hearing. Next up is House Bill 1502 relating to insurance. It would establish requirements for property and casualty insurers and policies for pre- and post-disaster protections. Members, first up, we have testimony from Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, Insurance Division. Just comments.
Insurance Division, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We have testimony in opposition from Mike Onofredi, Hawaii Insurance Council. Testimony, comments, NAMIC. Let me read that out. National Association for Mutual Insurance Companies. We have testimony from the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement and Support. We have testimony in support from individuals Cindy Lukey, Sherry Peterson via Zoom. Ms. Peterson, go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, and a special thank you to Representative Ellie Cochran and others for introducing this very important bill. I'm here to support this bill by way of introduction. I'm Sherry Peterson. I have been working with disaster survivors since about 3 weeks after the disaster occurred. And United Policies has been here since the early days after the disaster. Presently, I am working with United Policyholders, and in that capacity, I've been providing education, resources, and support to policyholders individually and collectively. And in that capacity have learned of many of the challenges they face in pursuing their claims, and also draw upon the experience of United Policyholders, who's been a nonprofit for over 30 years. Additionally, these suggestions this bill is the product of research as to what other states have done in response to policyholders' issues and concerns after a disaster. And this bill is specifically to take effect in a declared disaster. I just wanted to, I'm available for questions on my testimony, and I wanted to just highlight a few areas. One is Section 431 10EB, the notice of cancellation and non-renewal. We would address or would request additional language be added that if the reason for the non-renewal or cancellation is remedied within the notice period, that the policy should then be renewed and the notice of cancellation be rescinded. On 431 10E-E, adjustment of premium, that the automatic adjustment is intended to reflect the fact that there is no longer a dwelling on the property and that there are no longer any contents. However, insurance companies have been billing insureds and renewing the policies as if the dwelling still exists and as if the contents still exist. And so insured should not have to be paying premiums on property that was covered under the insurance policy, but that no longer exists. Also, regarding the total loss of contents, I just want to highlight that the insurance companies were paid policy premiums based on their calculation of the contents. So premiums were paid for the amount of contents. A number of the majority of insurance or insured's policyholders that I have come in contact are underinsured. The insurance company's argument that if you allow for 100% of the contents to be paid, it would result in increased cost is unsupported by any evidence. Their claim that it would result in fraud is also unsupported by any evidence. I also would like to highlight that something that I'm witnessing on an ongoing basis, in fact, we have a workshop this weekend on this issue, is that requiring survivors who have gone through this tremendous trauma to go back and list everything that was in their home while they're trying to rebuild their property, while they're trying to recover from this catastrophic event causes them more trauma because the body is trying to, and the brain is trying to protect them by telling them to forget what happened. And at this time, the insurance company is going, no, you have to go back in. And there are insurance companies that are requiring survivors to list the name of every CD that they owned and the title of every book that they owned. I don't know about you, but I would not be able to do that.
Ms. Peterson, I'm going to ask you to sum up.
Yes. Okay. And then finally, I just want to make a point about the ALE. We're asking that you add that the insurance company be required to advance 4 months of the ALE cost at the beginning of the disaster, and we are in support of the extension of ALE, having seen the effects of having only 1 year of ALE in this disaster.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Peterson. We have testimony in support from Catherine Wisner. Ms. Peterson, I'm sorry. Is that a delay? Do we have Ms. Wisner? Okay. Mr. Jake Francis in support, and then Ms. Krishna Bayudan via Zoom. I believe I see her on Zoom. Go ahead.
Good morning. Aloha, Chair Bellotti, Vice Chair Iwamoto, and members of the committee. My name is Krishna Bayudan, and I am a lifelong Lahaina resident. My family lost our home in the fire, and despite doing everything possible to rebuild, our home is nowhere near ready. Our additional living expenses ALE coverage runs out this March 2025, and without an extension, we will have nowhere to go. We needed a bill like this to pass a year ago, and I ask you to explore making this bill retroactive so Lahaina fire survivors aren't left behind. But even if that's not possible, this measure is still crucial to protect future families facing disasters in Hawaii. A 1-year ALE policy is simply not enough after a disaster of this scale. Even under normal conditions, rebuilding in Maui County takes longer than a year. In Lahaina, the process has been even slower due to infrastructure delays and supply shortages, factors completely beyond homeowners' control. Yet, insurance still cuts off assistance after 12 months, leaving families stranded before their homes are even finished. And a lot of people are in the same boat as my family. Many fire survivors secured leases between January to April of 2024 because that's when FEMA began shutting down its temporary hotel housing program. And now those families are facing the same looming deadline, which is running out of ALE with no clear path forward. And like many others, we want to stay in Lahaina. It's where we live, it's our home. But skyrocketing rents and lost income make that nearly impossible. FEMA's rental assistance requires a lease, but finding housing here is a challenge, and the renewal process to continue receiving aid is exhausting and unreliable. The state's Kala'iola program only has 450 units, while there were 4,500 households displaced. There's only 450 units at Kala'iola. So there is no guarantee my family will get the help in time. And for 8 months, we lived under the Red Cross program, moving between temporary housing, unsure of what was next. And we obviously don't want to go through that housing instability again. The rebuild process, we've started, but it's been delayed through, none of our control. And ALE is set to expire before we can go home. Lahaina fire survivors should not face homelessness while waiting to rebuild. Please pass this measure to ensure families in the future have the time they need to recover. Mahalo for your time and support.
Thank you. Any other testifiers in the room? Any other testifiers via Zoom? Seeing none, members' questions? I have questions for Insurance Commission.
Sure. Thank you very much, Chair.
So this bill is very broad, and I recognize the testimony that suggests that, we might not be identifying the right sections and all of that, and so this is really a work in progress. But emerging from the testimony is this real concern about additional living expense coverage. And members, I'm sorry, did you guys have any other questions? No. Emerging from the testimony is this additional living expense coverage, especially in times of disaster. And unfortunately, here in Hawaii, we haven't had an experience with a major disaster for a while until Lahaina. So the policies that people are wanting were not in place. I guess given the fact that the world globally is just seeing more and more of these kinds of disasters, what does the insurance market look like for this kind of policy that has, and is there even a product like that?
There are stuff on the market already that are open-ended. That has tightened up quite a bit based on what's happened in other markets. The Marco Polo fires, we assisted consumers there, and we saw a pretty wide range of loss of use. Some was just $5,000, some was incurred, from that to open-ended. But based on what's happened in other markets, companies have started tightening up some of their contracts. They're a little less generous now. It's cyclical. If changes can be made that help mitigate these risks, some of these things work through the system. You'll see interest rates have an effect on some of the reinsurance markets and cat bonds. So all that affects us, unfortunately. We're part of that market. So there are products available. They are probably less available than they were prior, that were very generous on loss of use. So.
Okay, going in a different direction, when Lahaina happened, and I recall having conversations with the insurance commissioner at that time, I think after the experience of the California wildfires, California's government came in and through emergency orders, and then there was a slew of legislation that sought to maybe address some of these things. Are you aware of that? And I think and this is not in your testimony, but unfortunately you're the only one here, so you get to answer it. In the National Association of Mutual Insurance Companies testimony, they point to California laws. So are you aware of what some of those laws are that California has enacted post-disasters that they've experienced, like the Palisades fire?
Yeah, there's been a lot of, larger markets do tend to kind of throw other markets kind of follow along. California has made it they had some restrictions on non-renewals. They had restrictions on amount of rate that could be filed for, and what you could use to calculate that rate. You couldn't really be forward-looking. You'd have to look back, and so it's been positive and negative. It's squeezed the market. Companies can't really bring in a premium that's commensurate with what they've got or the anticipated losses. And the Palisades fire is kind of one of those things that you maybe want to. It would have been ideally had that priced in prior to it happening versus later, so that squeezes the solvency question for companies. So it is kind of a balance. You want to have a competitive and attractive market, but also you want to have policies that pay out and cover what consumers need. And it's extremely disrupting to have a loss like this, and it is very frustrating, as they've testified, that it's to try and sort some of these things out. And some of the lower limits, the company just writes a check and that's it, it's done. Some of the higher limits, you do need to show that you've replaced the item, and then you'll get a balance. You'll get paid on the actual cash value. When the item's replaced, you get a balance paid. So and that can be a long process, especially with the rebuilding times that are going on. And as far as, so you've just got to kind of look at all the stakeholders and what can we do to keep our market attractive, but what can we also do to make sure that we have policies that pay out when something happens and cover what's needed.
Members, one last question, and then I'll turn it over to you. I know that insurance commissioners across the nation, I know that there's trade industry groups. Is there, in your experience, any group, regulators looking at this and working on these issues of what a policy could look like, in this event?
Yeah, insurance is left up to the states, which is helpful just because every market can be a little different. Gulf Coast states have some very aggressive hardening programs in place to try and for storms, for hurricanes. Western states generally have a wildfire issues. So as far as a catch-all, there is the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. They do write model laws, and a lot of these things will come out of that. Generally, they'll look at what's trending, what's happening, what can be done. Most of the stakeholders are there, the regulators, the commissioners are there, industry's there, there's consumer advocates that are there, and they try to hash out something that'll kind of satisfy what's going on, but have a balance for everyone.
Okay. If you become aware of any working groups at those kinds of organizations, it was the National Association of
Insurance Commissioners.
It would be helpful to pass that information along to us and to see what Hawaii is doing in understanding what other jurisdictions are doing and what model laws are developing. Again, I know California came up with a whole suite of laws after Pacific Palisades, and that may or may not have been the right approach. I don't know. We don't know, right? So that's the kind of information that I think would be good to be brought. And I know that the former insurance commissioner, I believe today may be his last day.
That's correct. That's why you're stuck with me. Sorry.
No, we know Mr. Ito deserves he really deserves all the fun he will have now, no longer being employed by the state of Hawaii. But I know he was formerly very involved in NEIC, and I think seeing the proposals in this bill points to the fact that we need to understand better what other states are doing.
Yeah, there is a National Council of Insurance Legislators too that might be an option if you want to look at that.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions?
Yeah, thank you. So I think Governor Green made some statements to the media, and I think he got these figures from the insurance department from his executive branch. He spoke about in the period of the last 20 years that Hawaii property owners paid around $38 billion in premiums. Does that sound about right?
I can't speak to that.
But are you saying your department did not provide him with these numbers?
We'd collect the premium tax, so we'd have a very good idea of what's coming in premiums across the entire state and what lines.
Okay, perfect. So that is quantifiable. Do you guys also collect data on the claims paid out during the last 20 years?
We could probably get that, and we do have that's part of the rates and part of the solvency regulation.
Okay, so just to do the math, that's $38 billion in premiums, only $14 billion in paid out claims in the last 20 years. That leaves a total, people might think of it as profit, but of $24 billion. And a lot of insurance is about investing capital that's collected. So the return on investment rate is around 10%. So in the period of 10 years, that would be flipping it to another $24 billion, and then another, because it's a 20-year period, so that would be another $24 billion at a minimum. Now we're already in the $72 billion range of profit. When you hear them say, or reinsurers say, we can't afford it, premiums are going to have to go up, and they cite all the losses that these reinsurance corporations, often they're multinational, that they're paying out around the world. But you never hear about all the billions and billions of dollars in hundreds of billions of dollars in premiums they're collecting, and decades of paying out nothing. You only hear about their woes, but no one's tracking the gains that they're making. Do you guys require them to open up their books, the reinsurance companies? Do you go really high up the ladder?
On the lines that are regulated, like the property and casualty, you have to justify the rates. You have to have an actuarial, basis for it. We have actuaries that we use, contract with to look at that as well. And that is all part of it. What's your cost? What's been your loss experience? What's your investment returns? A lot of the property and casualty, these are very short. They're 1-year policies, 6-month policies for most autos, and it's money that it usually flows in, flows back out for claims. There's a lot of money on the books that's invested, and a lot of that's earmarked for reserves. Like if I were to walk out of here and get hit by a bus, whoever's adjusting for the bus is going to put in a reserve and say, hey, I think Mr. Thompson's claim is going to be $80,000, so I'll earmark that, and that sits on the books for maybe a couple of years till I settle. So the companies do have a little float. They'll maybe have an underwriting loss. But they may make up the money on the investments that were earmarked for other things during that time. So it is kind of something that you generally don't file right away. You would look at how you're trending and then come in and file for a rate to go up or maybe stay the same or go down depending on.
But you do go beyond the retail insurance carrier, and you do look at the reinsurance.
That would be part of the
books.
cost they would be using to justify, like it's costing us this much to offset. So we'll look at what do they have on the books, and then if you don't have that on the books, what have you done to put that risk onto somebody else, and that would be your reinsurance, and then how much is that costing you?
And so you do look into the books of the reinsurance corporations.
If
that
it's
are
a filed rate,
multinational.
that should all be part of the review.
Okay, I'm gonna,
Yeah,
yes.
got it.
I think
Thank you.
this is good conversation. I also think that this is probably conversation for the CPC committee, which we are on.
Well-
So these are the kinds of questions that you should continue to pursue as bills move forward. Rep. Shimizu, you have a question?
Yeah, excuse me. Thank you, Chair. I'll make this brief. So for the additional requirements that is in this bill, do you have any idea how that would affect the premium cost?
I don't. I will say that it does vary among companies, the types of coverage they'll have. So some will have a % of the dwelling amount, and that's the ones that's somewhat controversial. I think in the past, with large fires in California, they realized that just a set dollar amount tended to usually not be enough. So some companies tied that to their dwelling amount as a %, which may be over-insuring depending on the situation. So as far as cost goes, it would be spread among a lot of different companies. It would depend on what their specific policies cover. Some policies are pretty rich. Some of the policies we looked at after the Maui fires, some of these companies were encumbered for probably $1.5 million, on the whole claim. Some maybe had their limits were low and they just popped checks and they were gone, within a week. So.
Okay, so basically you don't know.
I don't know. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly a specific number or %. You could probably come up with a % over the whole industry.
Follow-up question?
Yes, go ahead.
So if this bill were enacted and the requirements were put in place, would this affect all consumers across the board, or would an individual be able to not have certain coverages and it would be customized for what the individual would like to be covered for?
Yeah, as it currently sits, there are options with more generous policies versus more slim policies, maybe fire and contents. So you would have options, but if it was mandated, then that would be baked into every company would probably have to offer something similar to that, and that'd be baked into their rates.
So in other words, a consumer who may not want to pay for that, doesn't have that option to delete that coverage?
If it was in the statute, yeah, the company would have to be part of our review of the policy. And
Okay,
the
thank
rate.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. Members, any other questions? Seeing none, members, again, we're going to defer decision-making of all of these measures to the end of the agenda, our 10 o'clock a.m. agenda. We are in recess. Good morning. Convening our Committee on Public Safety hearing for Friday, January 31st, 2025, 10 o'clock a.m. here at the State Capitol in Conference Room 411. Members, we're going to jump right in to this hearing. We have a number of bills on the agenda and a number of bills for decision-making at the end of agenda. First up, House Bill 1002. This bill extends the term of the Oversight Coordinator of the Hawaii Correctional System of Oversight Commission, clarifies that the Oversight Coordinator has the general authority to inspect agencies and correctional facilities without notice. First up, we have testimony from Mr. Mark Patterson, Chair of the Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission, or Ms. Johnson, or his representative.
My name is Martha Torney, and I'm one of the commissioners with the Correctional System Oversight Commission. And we're very glad that you're hearing this bill. And we also appreciate the support we've gotten from the House for the last couple of years. And Representative Hashem, that goes out to you, too. What this bill does is two things. Number one, it extends the term of the Oversight Coordinator from 2 years to 4 years. And secondly, it ensures that the Oversight Coordinator is given unfettered access to the correctional facilities. Currently, the 2-year term requires the Commission to hold interviews, to advertise for the position, hold interviews, come up with 3 names and send to the governor, and governor makes a choice. It takes a while for a person to get up to speed with this job, and to change someone every 2 years would be very, very difficult for us. We really appreciate that Governor Green chose to reappoint Kristen Johnson, our oversight coordinator, who's just outstanding in that role. So that's our number one issue. Secondly, we do want to ensure that the oversight coordinator has unfettered access to the correctional facilities. Under the current administration and Mr. Johnson, that has been granted. It has not been a problem, but we cannot assure that will happen with future administrations. The way the law reads right now, it implies that they only have unfettered access in pursuit of a complaint that has been filed by an inmate. We want to make sure they have unfettered access for any reason for that purpose. So those are the things in our bills. Thank you very much for listening to our testimony.
Thank you. Members, up next is amended testimony from Director Tommy Johnson of the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Director Johnson? And members, that testimony is at your table.
Good morning, Chair Bellotti, Vice Chair Iwamoto, members of the committee. I'm Tommy Johnson, the Director of the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Martha actually stole all my thunder because she almost went verbatim from my testimony. But in short, we have no problem with the 2 to 4 year issue. And Martha's right in that while I may give them unfettered access, if we don't clarify it in the statute, future directors may not. And I think they need unfettered access to find issues, work with the department to resolve them. And I think this sends a clear message and makes it clear that the Oversight Commission and the Department of Public Safety were partners in trying to address the longstanding issues with the department. Thank you.
Thank you. I love that term, we are partners in doing this work, because I also think we are partners across the table on this side. Up next, members, we have testimony and support from the Office of the Public Defender. We have testimony in support from the ACLU of Hawaii.
Aloha Chair Bellotti, Vice Chair Iwamoto, and committee members. Carrie Ann Chirota, Policy Director on behalf of ACLU Hawaii. We strongly support this measure, and I just want to highlight that there are essential principles to have an effective oversight body. And this has been repeated in literature by Michelle Deitch, who is a professor. She's considered a national and international expert in oversight. And I want to highlight 3 of the 5 principles. That these oversight commissions or bodies must be independent of the correctional agency and able to do their work without interference or pressure from the agency or any other body. Number 2, monitors must have unfettered and confidential access to facilities, incarcerated persons, staff, documents, and materials, and they should have the ability to visit at any time of the day without prior notice. Jails, prisons, out-of-state prisons. The other principle is that they must take a holistic approach to evaluating the treatment of incarcerated people, relying on observations, interviews, surveys, and other methods of gathering information from prisoners, as well as on statistics, performance-based measure outcomes. And this is a collaborative process between the department, legislature, community. But we need to highlight, why do we need an oversight body? We need it for transparency and accountability, because people who are incarcerated do not lose all of their constitutional rights just because they are detained in our jails or in our prisons. It doesn't matter if they're here or if we're sending them out of state. And if you look at the record for the last 20 plus years, and even currently, these are the most closed institutions. We need unfettered access. So the Oversight Commission needs this to bring attention to issues such as an uptake in suicides, the number of incidents of violence, assaults, murders, rapes. This has been occurring, and we need to work together to uncover it, bring it to light, and to focus on transforming our system from one of punishment to rehabilitation. So please pass this measure, because ultimately, this is a bill in favor of transparency and accountability. Mahalo.
Okay, we have testimony in support from Community Alliance on Prisons.
Good morning, committee. Oops, I got to lower it to my height. We are in strong support of this measure. The commission has done amazing work. What happens inside our correctional facilities has been kind of a secret for many, many years until we actually got an oversight commission. And we got that because the community pushed for it. They pushed for more transparency and accountability so that their loved ones, they could know what was going on with their loved ones who were incarcerated. So we definitely support the commission. You should go to their website. It is awesome. This woman started in July 2022. She created the website for the commission. She is, every meeting they have, there are reports up there. There are minutes of every meeting, video recordings of the meetings. I mean, she has done more for transparency than anybody else in this state. So we definitely support extending her term for 4 years because, you know, in 2 years, hard to really get something done. So it's really important that she has unfettered access. And we kind of like the idea. I looked at all the government terms, and you know, the Public Utilities Commission has 6-year terms, and they have that because they want to be independent. They're regulators. They're not like any other department in the state. So I would love to see the commission have 6-year terms so that it's totally apolitical between elections. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We have testimony from individuals, I believe all in support. First from Carla Allison, Marilyn Eaton, Veronica Moore. Members are in the room. Any other testifiers? I'll call you back. Hold on. In Zoom, any other testifiers? Seeing none. I believe the representative from the Office of the Public Defender is here, so please come on up. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Sonny Gandon, Deputy Public Defender. We are in support of this measure. Many of you have a memory of this conversation over the last several years about how it took several reports to get to this point. We would like to continue the depoliticization of the conversation about incarceration in this state. We believe that oversight is necessary and ongoing for this department, differentiated from other departments. Of course, the DOE doesn't have an oversight commission. That's what you folks do. But because of the issues facing incarceration regarding human rights, we think that this is necessary. One of the biggest things I think that's in support is the ways that Ms. Johnson has worked with the legislature and the judiciary in allowing individuals access to facilities. So please don't take mine or the department's or advocates' word for it. Please, I just hope that you try and go yourself to see where your own constituents are housed, both pre-trial and after sentencing. Just see it for yourself, see the conditions, and make your own assessments. After Judge Kim did that on the Big Island 20 there was a pretrial incarceration rate that was reduced by 20%. We would like the continued depoliticization of this conversation, and we stand in support.
Thank you. Any other testifiers? Seeing none. Members, questions? I have several questions, and I can start, and then everyone can fill in afterwards if you want to. I guess Ms. Torney. And I guess I would start by saying, because I'm fairly new to this subject matter where I've actually had to do a much deeper dive. I've been, I was here for the enactment of this, obviously, but going and having a deeper dive into the statutes is making, I have to be more aware of what's going on in the statute. And so I just want to say that the model that we have adopted for our oversight commission is really unique in the country, correct?
And broad, very broad.
And very broad. And that oversight commissions and oversight models throughout the nation vary. And so really, we are building the airplane as we are flying it. Okay. Can you give us a little bit of an understanding of the timeline of hiring, of the commission being stood up from 2019 with Act 179? And then the hiring of the first, the identification of the commissioners, and then the hiring of the first coordinator.
Okay, we were all appointed in the fall of 2019, and we held our first meeting in January of 2020, and we have subsequently held a meeting every single month after that. We were funded initially, but Governor Ige did not release the funds. So we went through the process of advertising for the position, got applicants. We had not gone into the interview process yet, and we had to rescind that list that we had received. It wasn't until 2 years later that, again, we were funded through a bill, not as part of the budget, through a bill. And this time, the governor did release the funds, so we were able to go.
Okay, when was that bill introduced and passed for the funding?
The funding was, it would be in the 2021 session. And so it would be effective of July of 2021.
And then when you said the governor released it, Governor Ige?
Governor Ige released the funds, yes. They
And you
weren't
don't know the-
released immediately, so we could not start immediately.
Okay, and then you don't know what the bill number was for that?
I don't remember, but we can find out for you. I can get that to you.
Okay. Go on, continue.
And so then the money was released a little bit at the end of the fall. And so we put out our advertisements. We got applicants. We vetted all commissioners, all 5 commissioners participated. They all got copies of the applicants. Many of them were clearly unqualified. So we had to do our initial vetting by ranking them. And then we chose, I think, the top 8 applicants. And we had applicants from around the country. We were very, very lucky that we got them from around the country. And from that list, we came up with 3 names, and Kristen Johnson was one of those names. We forwarded the names to the governor. The governor made a decision to hire Ms. Johnson, who's sitting right here. And it took a couple of months for her to come online because, that's the state process, unfortunately.
What date and year was that at that point?
She came online in July of 2022. So 2.5 years after we began. We did our best, the 5 of us who were sitting there. And so she's been with us 2.5 years. And as Kat mentioned, just go to our website. We have accomplished so much more since she's been here. Does this mean we've accomplished everything in our mandate? Absolutely not. We still do not have the staff to help take care of everything in the mandate. Part of our mandate is to assist the Department of Public Safety in effectuating their reentry statute. And we have talked to the department about, but we haven't gotten into really active discussion about how we're going to be accomplishing that. But there are many, many things that we're working on.
Has the commission, and I do not doubt in any way that Ms. Johnson has done a wonderful job. I've interacted with her and I've seen the reports and everything. But looking forward, right, we're writing this law for not just the next 2 years, 4 years, 8 years. It's actually law in perpetuity until a future legislature changes it. So knowing that Ms. Johnson's term is coming to an end on July 2024, I assume. Because,
She's just been reappointed.
okay, when did that reappointment happen?
The reappointment took place July 1st of 2024.
July 1st, 2024.
Is it, oh, I'm sorry,
reappointed.
no, Kristen's correcting me. December 2024, I'm sorry. So she's now serving another 2-year term,
Okay. And
which
is
would
it-
expire December 31st of 2026.
Okay, so the idea is that it's going to be, now, what process did you folks go through in, and I just want to understand, right? No judgment. What process did you go through for any kind of evaluation by the commission to make a recommendation? I assume you made a recommendation to governor to reappoint her. What process did you folks engage in?
For this type of position that is governor appointed, you don't have to follow the same civil service rules. So we did not have a scoring sheet or anything. What we did was send out all the applicants, their resumes to the different members. And
No, not for the hiring.
Yes.
But for the reappointment. What was the process for reappointment occurring?
we had to go through the whole hiring process again. We had to replicate it. That's what takes so much time.
Okay, so you replicated, when did that start?
So we started that around September, October, and we advertised nationally, and again, we got many applicants, many totally unsuitable, so some, in the vetting process, we were able to knock off a lot right in the beginning. You could see AI was writing the response to us. And then we interviewed a total of 6 people and forwarded 3 names to the governor. We did not list a preference because we did not feel that that was our responsibility, even though we strongly preferred to have Christian continue with us. So the governor was free to make whatever choice he wanted, and luckily he chose to reappoint her.
Okay. So you're saying that the oversight coordinator is not governed by any,
They're an exempt employee, so they have all the rights of a civil servant, but they're exempt.
and then as drafted, the law is requiring you to go through this entire, replicating the hiring process all over again?
Yes.
It does not, the law does not provide the commission with any kind of internal process to maybe make some recommendations, and then a reappointment process, which could be avoided.
Yes.
Which could avoid this process.
I inquired of the AG, were we allowed to write a letter to the governor requesting just a reappointment? And the answer was no. The law required we go through the whole process again. I would prefer that we're allowed to write a letter to the governor requesting a reappointment of the same person. If the governor turns that down, then we go through the whole hiring process again.
Okay, in other commissions in the state, where there are lay people who are working with a coordinator or, say, an executive director, have you looked to what other state agencies do to provide kind of recommendations for the continuation of the coordinator or executive director?
I don't know whether other states have term limits for their coordinator. Kristen can answer that.
Aloha, my name is Kristen Johnson. I'm the current oversight coordinator of the Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission. Before I answer this, I just want to backtrack slightly to a comment that was made about like making the plane as it's flying. I just want to specify that correctional oversight is not new to this nation. It's actually been around since before the Constitution was written. The oldest oversight agency was made in
Pennsylvania Prison Society in 1787.
1787.
And they're still doing it.
That's our oldest prison oversight agency to date. Currently, there's at least 15 throughout the nation. 2 are actually very similar to our jurisdiction, where it's a combined jails and prisons. And then there's just a ton of jail oversight specific agencies across the nation. We don't know exactly how many. We're trying to figure that out. I work very, very closely with the Jail and Prison Innovation Lab. They are the ones, Dr. Michelle Deitch, who actually helped write the write the bill for this oversight commission. And so when looking at how oversight commissions choose their executive directors across the nation, the standard is actually once you hire somebody to ensure that they cannot be removed without cause. The reason for that is to ensure that they're not bowing into potential political pressure from the governor, from the legislature, whoever it may be, that really ensures that there's true independence. But other than that, there are some who have 4-year terms. I've never seen one personally who has 2 years. I've seen 4 or more. And the other thing about a potential 6-year term, I do want to clarify, when we initially put out for this bill 2 years ago, we asked for a 6-year term. The reason why we did that was to be in alignment with the other independent oversight agency in this state, which is the the Ombudsman's Office. The Ombudsman's Office in this state has a 6-year term, so we wanted to be in alignment with that. The Senate previously respectfully disagreed, and so this year we came back with 4-year terms just to make sure that there wasn't any disagreements.
They amended their bill to 4 years from 6 years. And that's why we went.
Right, so that's why we, but I do want to clarify the two different things, that the best standard that was written by Dr. Michelle Deitch is to ensure that the oversight coordinator or executive director cannot be removed without cause. And I think the best standard is either 4 or more year terms.
But I will say that in the statute, there's actually no mention of that, the coordinator, whether or not they can be removed. There's no provisions at all about any kind of removal, rehiring.
That's true. That's
The
true.
only language in the statute is actually about the members of the commissions being removed from office for cause upon notice. That's the only kind of removal process.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Because this was brought up in testimony by Ms. Brady about the PUC commissioners having 6-year terms, you can sit down, Ms. Johnson. Even though it's not in this bill, I actually think that this is a puka in the law, because there's actually no language in here for transition of the commissioners. So you're going to be here forever, Ms. Torney.
There's other laws in the state, and a commissioner can only be on a commission or a board for 8 years maximum.
Okay, where is that language?
I would have to ask the AG for that language, but that's pretty much so across the board.
Okay, and is all of the commissioners operating that? So what is that? What is that language for the commissioner? The term limits of commissioners?
I don't remember. I would have to go look it up for you, but it is a different law that affects all boards and commissions, and that an 8-year max is what they're assigned to. I don't know whether Representative Iwamoto, was that true for the school board too? Oh, that was elected. That's different, yeah. It used to be elected. I don't know whether it's true today for those appointed.
Okay.
I'm willing to look that up for you. find it
Okay,
for you.
because I actually think that it's equally important to think about the commissioners who, and their transition, and ensuring that we have a solid group of individuals who, who can continue to work in coordination with working with a coordinator who may have a longer term.
Yes.
And it's also important to have commissioners potentially staggered,
Yes.
which now doesn't happen, because at any moment right now, we could lose all the commissioners all at once, and that whole entire knowledge base would be lost.
When we were appointed for different end terms. And so mine ended, I was appointed in 2019 at the very beginning, so I started really January 1st. And my appointment, my first appointment expired 3 years later. And I was then reappointed. My term currently ends at 6.5 years. It ends on 2026, June 30th, and I will step down at that time, because we should be staggered. The law is not clear on that. I believe in our appointment letters, it made it clear that the intention was to be
Recording
staggered,
in progress.
but they're not staggered. And I'm afraid of everybody walking off at the same time. That's why I'm going to leave at the end of my current appointment.
Okay, is there a listing of the members, the commissioners, and when their terms of appointment are done? Do we know?
We can get that, yes. We can get that for you. And we really should get the initial letter so you can see what we were appointed to initially.
You know, the bill is simple. It just extends it by 4, but it doesn't solve some of the problems, the very
Yeah.
problems that you just identified
Yes.
in the process, because you'd have to, by the end of, if this bill passes with 4 years term, or if it were to stay, say it were to stay, then you would have to, if we did nothing, then you would have to go through the exact same process again. And you
Yes.
may, or with that commission at that time, and Ms. Johnson, we don't know. I mean, that's a long time for now, right?
Yeah.
People move on. You'd have to go through the entire process.
Yes.
Whether or not that a particular individual is there. Okay, all right. Members, any other questions? I've kind of exhausted my questions.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
For Kristen. Sorry. Oh, I have a question, Kristen. Thank you. I just wanted to know, you came from other jurisdictions, right?
Yeah.
My understanding is you came highly qualified from other
Thank you.
jurisdictions. And so can you just kind of explain how they did it? Well, first of all, what were their jurisdictions, and then how they did it in their jurisdictions as far as the time frame?
Sure. So I started my career with the Michigan Legislative Corrections Ombudsman. And in that jurisdiction, if I'm remembering correctly, once the ombudsman is chosen, and they're chosen by the legislature, they are in that position until removed for cause. Then I moved to the New York City Board of Correction. Now, the Board of Correction is more similarly set up like our commission. They have a board, and then they have the staff above. So they have the board, the executive director, et cetera. The board members are chosen and have term limits by the New York City Council. The executive director is chosen by the board, but once the executive director is chosen, it's more like a permanent employee. They wouldn't be removed without cause. Unless it was a police oversight commission where very similar setup. You have the board who's chosen, but then the executive director role, same idea, permanent employee, unless removed by the board due to cause.
Okay, so you're saying it was just indefinite, and you were just a permanent employee, and there was no term?
Yeah, in the previous offices that I've been in, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hold on. You were the executive director of
No,
the
no.
New York City? Okay.
No.
What did you serve as the New York City Board of?
Yeah, so in my previous roles, I started as an analyst overseeing the prisons, and I was assigned 6 prisons looking at 42,000 people in custody. When I moved to the Board of Correction, I was assigned 3 different jails. Rikers Island is always viewed as one jail system, but it's multiple jails throughout. So I had 3 different jails assigned to me. That's where I worked as a standard specialist. And then moving to the Police Oversight Agency, that was a brand new agency that was started, and I ran and led the investigations unit, so I really got that office off the ground, got it moving, which led me to this position now.
So the last position was the one that is equivalent to the oversight coordinator, is that correct?
Yeah.
Or kind of what we have here in Hawaii as the oversight coordinator, is that what that last position was?
Yeah, so I wasn't in those specific positions, but yeah, the last 2 roles that I've served in, both of those agencies were similarly slated as the current agency I'm in now.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
I'll follow up. So New York City Board of Corrections had a board, an executive director, and then staff.
Right.
And board was chosen by city council, executive director was chosen by the board, and then the executive director was a permanent employee who could not be let go except with cause. Then you went to, what was the Police Oversight Agency?
That was the Office of Police Oversight and Public Accountability, and that was with the city of Grand Rapids in Michigan. That was a brand new agency that was created by the community, and so I was the second employee to be hired in that role, in the full agency. So it was really like starting it from the ground up, all the investigations regarding police misconduct.
And that office was structured how?
So that office was structured similarly to our commission, where you had the board members up top, chosen by the city of Grand Rapids, the city council. And then you had the executive director, who is Brandon Davis. He could not be removed without cause. And then under Brandon, the executive director, you had his staff, who were permanent employees.
And did that executive director have a set term?
No. No, just the board members had the set terms.
Okay. Are you aware of how they went about evaluating the executive director in the New York Office of Police, Michigan Office of Police Oversight and Accountability?
As far as like ensuring that they're doing the job, or?
Yeah, so like annual reviews.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, my understanding is that there is an annual review, not just with the board, but then also with the city manager. The city of Grand Rapids is a city manager structure, and so the city manager has complete control over all of the city departments instead of the mayor. And so my understanding is that he had to, have annual reviews with not just his board, but also the city manager to be able to show, the work completed.
Was there an annual review process for the executive director for the New York City Board of Corrections?
That I'm not sure, but I could look into that.
And have you ever been in a place where you've seen a transition occur of the executive director, the counterpart to the board?
Yes, the New York City Board of Correction, during my time there, they had 3 directors change out. That was from the directors actually stepping down. It was a challenging role and a very challenging system.
New York City is very challenging, yes.
Yeah.
And those were like, so those are changes because of them choosing to step down.
As far as I'm aware, yeah, that's
Okay.
what we were told.
And then what was the timing of that? I mean, I'm sure there are probably in politics involved, but do you know what the timing of those changes were?
I know that it was very fast. I don't think any of the directors stayed for more than 2 years. So they were pretty fast transitions, which really, I will say, shook up the office pretty badly. It was very difficult transitions every time a new director came in with a different vision, different policies, different standards, made it very difficult.
But in each of those situations, or for the New York City Board of Corrections, again, they could not be removed but for cause. And then each time the transition occurred, they were moving on their own.
Yeah, that was my understanding, yeah. And all of them had their next role lined up, so I have no reason to believe that they were removed for cause.
Okay. All right, that's helpful to understand.
I just want to make a comment for your information. If you go to prisonoversight.org, Michelle Deitch and others created this dashboard that links you to all the states. It has a map of the United States. You want to see how Pennsylvania does it, click on it. It will let you know what the law is and stuff like that.
So I was looking at that website yesterday, and I do think that what makes Hawaii unique is that more states are more like ombudsmans, which is a different model than what the commission is. And then we have this hybrid thing. So we really are in this kind of hybrid thing. And then I think there's pukas in our law that we need to take some time to fix. Because again, if this oversight commission is supposed to be ongoing, which the law, I don't believe this is going to go away. We have to make sure we get all of the laws smoothed out so we can anticipate changes, orderly changes, thoughtful changes.
Yes.
Over time.
Okay,
members,
thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, let's move on. Moving on to House Bill 677 relating to identification. This is the ongoing conversation about requiring DCCR, Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, to assist inmates in obtaining inmate civil identification cards and other identifications. First up, we have testimony in support from Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation.
Good morning, Chair Bellotti, Vice Chair Iwamoto. I'm Tommy Johnson, the Director of the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. We do support this measure. We have no problems with it at all. We are already assisting inmates at the Lava Correctional Facility with ID cards. We have the funding in our budget to purchase the other machines. We're waiting for the city and county. They were changing their specifications on their machines, so we have to purchase the exact same machines that they have. And so we will be purchasing machines for 5 other facilities. we will purchase for HCCC, which will take care of HCCC in Kulani. Then you have Halava, and then we will purchase for Maui Women's and HCCC. We will not purchase for Waiava because Waiava will be going down to work furlough, and OCCC will have the machine there for them. But in the interim, we will be moving the Halava machine to the Women's Correctional Facility because it's a satellite machine, so we can start helping the ladies get ID cards as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Testimony in support from the Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission. Ms. Johnson.
Aloha, Kristen Johnson, the Oversight Coordinator with the Oversight Commission. We are in strong support of this bill. We do want to recognize the department's ongoing collaboration with the DMV and all of the hard work that they've done. One of our favorite parts about this bill is that it kind of specifies that things can begin before a year. And so the department has mentioned that reentry starts on day one. We thoroughly agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Testimony in support from Department of Human Services. Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. McKenna Woodward on behalf of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. We will be standing on our written testimony today. Mahalo for your consideration of this important measure.
Thank you. Testimony in support, comments from Department of Human Services. Testimony in support from Waikiki Health. Testimony in support from Hawaii Disability Rights Center. Testimony in support from Community Alliance on Prisons.
Aloha again, committee. Kat Brady testifying on behalf of Community Alliance on Prisons in strong support of this measure. You know, we did pass the law in 2017 for ID, and yet people are still leaving without ID. This is sort of an overview from the National Council of State Legislatures. 21 states have laws aimed at helping previous offenders get ID. 17 states provide permanent identification cards. 9 states provide state ID cards. 3 states tried, but 1 state made it, actually. Alabama, Mississippi, and Oklahoma. Alabama passed a law, but Mississippi and Oklahoma did not pass a law, but they did other things. And some of the cool things they did was some of them actually started working on driver's licenses for people. And that would be really important. The Big Island, not a very constant bus service, so people would be driving long distances to find jobs, to go to work. So we thought that was a really good, cool thing. And then I was looking and I found something from the U.S. Department of Transportation that actually is a toolkit. And I gave this to the department because we got to get it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brady. I tabbed that in your testimony, just so you know. We have testimony from the Office of the Public Defenders. Thank you. Testimony in support from ACLU Hawaii.
Aloha, Fri Jan, Policy Director, ACLU Hawaii. We strongly support this measure. As you know, it already has been in existence. We do want to acknowledge the leadership of Director Johnson for purchasing what we need to get done. But I just want to emphasize the fact that obtaining identification is like the bare minimum of what you need to have successful reintegration. And just for a second, if I can put on another hat, some years ago, I was the program director for Maui Economic Opportunities Reintegration Program, which the comprehensive reentry law was literally drafted by Kat Brady and others, modeled after that program, which provided comprehensive case management, holistic support in terms of housing, healthcare, treatment, family reunification, cultural programs, given the disparities in our system, and we know so many Hawaiians are locked up. And that comprehensive model is absolutely necessary. But again, think about it. We can't even get into the Capitol without an ID. You can't go to the bank. Everything is premised upon having an ID. And so ultimately what I'd love to see, passing this law, but having benchmarks every 6 months or quarterly, seeing how much progress we've made, because we need to strive for everyone having IDs before they're leaving and seeing where we are at. That is a measure and a tool too for accountability, and that will benefit individuals, their ohana, and our entire community. Because if someone doesn't have an ID to get a job, guess what likely could be happening? You might have to revert to old ways. And so if we look at this as a workforce development measure, housing, accessing everything, it is needed. And let's set some benchmarks to see progress for full implementation. Mahalo.
Thank you. We have testimony from Carla Allison in support an individual. Testimony from another individual, Veronica Moore, in support. Members, any other testifiers in the room?
Angela Melody Young, Roar Cares in strong support. So I have an art class. I have students from Kapalama Elementary School, and we also do the neighborhood security walk. And so we care about public safety because my fourth grader.
Ms. Young, can you testify
Yes,
to the
okay.
contents of this measure, which is about
prisoners.
the identification?
Yes. Well, I was just elaborating. We care about public safety and the effects of it because my fourth grader is in our neighborhood security walk. So we walk around the block to do public safety initiatives. So without identification, people cannot go to bars, rent an apartment, book a hotel room, or buy a car. Each year, more than 600,000 people are released from state and federal prisons, and many times these people, upon their reintegration with society, do not have this opportunity or means to obtain important identification documents. And individuals, upon reintegration with society, often face burdensome barriers when obtaining housing and employment due to difficulties with identification. So to address this issue, states have adopted a variety of laws to help prior offenders. And this, so the snapshot provides a basic overview of state policies. For example, there are states that have chosen to provide identification cards upon release through legislation with
Ms. Young, I'm going to give you about 30 more seconds because we have to keep moving on, but if you could wrap your thing up, and then also you can provide your testimony in writing to our committee clerks at the end of this, if you would like to. If you would like to.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay.
30 more seconds, please.
So, as I was highlighting other states' work, they have provided legislation that works administratively with the county's Department of Motor Vehicles. So if this state wants to copy other states that have had successful legislations, I think it's a good idea to legislate it into this bill.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Young.
you.
All right. Any other testifiers? Members, questions? No questions. Moving on to House Bill 481 relating to offender reentry, and this is about certificates for suitability for employment. First up, we have testimony, comments from Director Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Bellotti, Vice Chair Iwamoto. I'm Tommy Johnson, the Director of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I'll summarize my comments. In short, correctional jurisdictions don't issue this type of document, employment suitability, to someone exiting. What we generally do is verify what programs they completed, that they paid their restitution, that their sentence has expired, and then we can provide copies of their transcripts. The other concern we have is that a lot of the folks in our custody and care go through sex offender treatment and or substance abuse treatment. Without their express written consent, we can't release any information regarding their participation or non-participation in those programs, whether they completed it or not, whether it's ordered or not. So I would think we need to explore a different way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director. Testimony in support of Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission, Ms. Johnson.
Aloha, Kristen Johnson with the Oversight Commission. The Commission is in support of this bill. One of the things that the Commission wanted to point out is that it could be extremely beneficial for the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation to collaborate with state and federal agencies. I shouldn't say most. I think there are many state and federal agencies that don't consider people who were previously incarcerated, but I think that really needs to change. People with previous experience like that are very motivated, they're willing to work, they're ready to work, and they also have very interesting and different lived experience that could be very beneficial to this job field. So we are in support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Johnson from Hawaii State Substance Abuse Coalition in support. I'm just smiling because there was a Mr. Johnson, a Ms. Johnson, and now there's another Mr. Johnson. All right. Testimony and support from Michael Rice, individual. Testimony and support from Andrew Crossland, individual. Any other testifiers? Office of Public Defender?
This is part of a broader push to reintegrate individuals back into society after they've done their time. It's kind of a golden ring, something to get, and it's differentiated from the classes that people usually have to complete in order to fulfill with the requirements of the Hawaii Paroling Authority. Those classes might be, say, RDAP 1 or RDAP 2, some sort of behavioral health class, some sort of class regarding mental health or violence, something having to do with addiction. This is directed towards the public. This is directed towards people who could be potential employers, to let them know that this individual is worthy of employment. This is part of the broader conversation about human beings leaving Hawaii because they can't find employment. The conversation that we have about needing qualified individuals to do the basic work that these people can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ganadin. Any other testifiers in the room? Any other testifiers via Zoom? Seeing none, members, questions? Representative Iwamoto.
Thank you. It's for Oversight Director Kristen.
Hello.
Are there other jurisdictions who offer this kind of employment readiness certificate?
Yeah, one of actually the best examples, and I'm a little biased, but in Michigan, they have an entire vocational village where they literally have classrooms on one side and different vocational practices that come in on the other side. They really help people get prepared. They have a resume, everything built, ready to go before they exit. And then they also actually communicate with different agencies, whether it be city, county, or state, within the location that the individual is going back to try to secure a job before they're even released from prison. So that's a great example of just that partnership.
Okay, got it. So if I may, Chair. So normally when somebody is released either on probation or maybe they sleep at the facility, but they go out and get a job and they go to work. I mean, there's multiple ways that somebody would be exiting and working. But so there's a kind of coming out process, I guess, to the employer doing the application. You're like, oh, here, and I have the certificate. I mean, so is that to kind of, is it a way to kind of come out as a, like to when you're applying for a job, but then it's also framed in this positive way, but I am ready for employment?
Yeah, I think
kind of balance that?
Yeah, I think it's just another way to highlight that, yes, I was incarcerated, but look at all these things that I did while I was incarcerated. I made use of my time. And so it's just really the way I read this bill is that it's just really highlighting that if they took a program or if they, did whatever they were required to do, it highlights that, to say, I am responsible. I went to my classes. I did what the state expected me to do. And now here I am asking for employment.
Okay, I'm a little concerned, though, for those who are still in the process of receiving services and they might not have that certificate.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're an employer, you're like, okay, but everyone else who's gone through, they have the certificate, where's yours? Could that be used against somebody if the employer knows about this?
Potentially. I don't know for sure. I think the challenge is that, and although, again, the department is, trying to increase the amount of programs that they have, there are wait lists. So there could be an individual waiting to get in a program. It doesn't mean they're not trying. It doesn't mean they're not putting in that effort. But I could see that potentially, if one person has it, one person doesn't, I could see that as a potential barrier.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you
Souza.
for Kristen. So in that jurisdiction in Michigan, was it actually called a certificate, or was it just like a general
It was more
reintegration?
like a resume, like a really professional. Yeah.
Okay. And then also a follow up to that, and I echo Representative Iwamoto's concerns, because I upon reading the bill, I guess from my perspective, I could see this as being a burdensome thing, not necessarily, it's meant to be positive, it's meant to help with that reintegration process, but it could be extremely burdensome. Because, I guess when they're trying to move forward, here's like this extra step, and are employers in the private sector, public sector going to require this? And would it be difficult to maybe obtain if you're still continuing services? Or so we don't want to create a situation where it becomes more burdensome than positive. So do you also echo that sentiment where it could have that negative effect?
That makes sense to me. I think potentially to get around that is, and Director Johnson could probably communicate this a little more, but if case managers aren't already, really helping people uplift their resumes and get those resumes ready and prepared, to be able to take anything that they're doing in the facility and make it into, a real skill that they can highlight to potential employers. Maybe that's the better route to go, is just really ensure
Thank you.
the resume building.
Thanks so much. Yeah, Chair, I just want to echo that this bill is extremely vague, and it actually defaults to the administrative function. And so I think that the sentiment's great, just maybe more fleshed out, more detailed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, go ahead, Representative Shimizu.
Question for Director Johnson. The bill states certificate, and I think as previous questions alluded to, that definition might entail different things. Currently, and I think it was mentioned like a resume, just stating the facts of what programs were completed. Would the department be able to provide those types of documentation so that the inmate that is being discharged has that on record so that he can present that factually, just as is what he's accomplished?
We already provide a transcript to them of the courses they completed without indicating on a transcript what was ordered, right? So they may have completed 8 out of 10, but what the person will see is they completed 8.
Okay, so that documentation is already in place.
It's
then.
already in place, and a letter also verifying that a separate letter verifying that they have completed their sentence to the state, their term is done. Our concern is that employment suitability is normally determined after you apply for a job, after conditional offers employment is made, when you pass suitability. But when we also note that this measures outside of the governor's executive budget, and so therefore will be a cost item as well. But we do provide the transcript, and we do provide verification of completion of sentence, and we think those two things is maybe what they're trying to say in this bill. We're just not sure.
Okay, thank you. So
Thank
that
you.
exists. I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further questions, moving on to House Bill 251 relating to social work. This would require the department, in collaboration with the Department of Human Services, to develop and establish a social work training program to assist nonviolent incarcerated individuals in the area of social work. First up, we have testimony in opposition from Director Johnson from Department of Corrections.
Thank you, Chair Bellotti, Vice Chair Remoto. I'm Tommy Johnson, the Director of the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. We respectfully oppose this measure and recommend alternatives, initiatives, as in giving funding to the universities. Neither the DCR nor the DHS have the authority to license social workers. That would be under DCCA. And there's also some concern with the statute, compliance with statute 467E-7 as it relates to licensing requirements for social workers, including education, examination, experience required, and section 667E-13 as it relates to prohibited acts and penalties. We requested this, if this measure moves forward, that the effective date be extended to provide time to coordinate with partner agencies for funding and look for alternatives.
Thank you, Director. Testimony in support, Ms. Johnson, Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission.
Hello. The commission does stand on its written testimony. The one thing I just wanted to add that we should have included is that it could be beneficial for the department to work with either a university or the other agency that Mr. Johnson had mentioned about getting, somebody accredited to be a social worker. So we just wanted to add that in. Thank you.
Thank you. Testimony, comments, DCCA professional vocational licensing.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Rochelle Araki, the Executive Officer of the Social Worker Licensing Program. The department stands on its written testimony providing comments on the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from Department of Human Services. Okay. Testimony in support from Hawaii Substance Abuse Coalition, Mr. Johnson. Testimony from Michael Older in support, individual. Testimony in support, Office of the Public Defender.
Deputy Public Defender. There are some minor administrative issues with the implementation of this bill, none of which we think should bar its passage. Many of the people who were formerly incarcerated, what they want to do is they want to help people who have been in similar situations, especially women. What they need is a clear path and a profession to do so.
Thank you. Testimony in opposition from Ms. Veronica Moore. Any other testifiers in the room? Any other testifiers via Zoom? Members, questions? Go ahead.
I have a question for, I don't know where she, oh, sorry, hi. You're with the DCCA and you license social workers. Okay, can I ask you a question? So are there certain, does the licensure of a social worker, are you not allowed to get licensed in the state of Hawaii for certain crimes or being listed on certain lists if you have your child taken away by Child and Family Services? Is there things that will preclude you from working as a social worker?
Okay, thank you for the question, Representative Iwamoto. So each application is, regardless of what's happened in the past, gets reviewed. It really depends on what the conviction was, and just because you have a conviction doesn't necessarily exclude you from practicing. So yes, there's not a no to, because you have a conviction, you can't get a license. Yes, not.
I have a question for Director Johnson. Thank you. As I read this bill, I assumed that there may already be programs working with like UH or other organizations that are doing training in social work. Is that the case right now, currently?
They do. We sometimes we accept students to train with us. We accept psychologist students, right? To also train with us as well. I understand what the bill is trying to do. I don't think we're the right entity to do it. I don't disagree with the commission that we could benefit from hiring people with lived experience, because most of our CSAC qualified substance abuse counselors have had issues in the past, and they can talk the language, and that's why they're successful in dealing with those folks. But I think a better avenue may be some type of Second Chance Act funding with the Department of Labor and working with UH and us, or DHS as well, to try to see if we can get some of these folks that qualify once they get out to go to class, to do social work, even while they're inside. But the problem we have is this would also fall outside the governor's executive budget.
Okay. And again, I want to really make the distinction. So you currently work with the University of Hawaii and take on like their student social worker interns.
Yes.
And they work within the system. Has there been expressed interest from the inmate population to pursue areas of social work upon exit?
No, not to my knowledge, but we have had former inmates who have gotten out, completed a degree, while they're in, they completed an associate's degree, Once they get out, they completed a degree either in social work or some other field, and then they go out looking for employment for licensure. The problem is sometimes they will not pass the state suitability because they have a criminal record.
Okay.
So that's for hiring, not for licensing, two different things.
Yep. Yep. Okay. How do your training programs track the interest of the population upon exit to know where they are seeking potential employment, whether it's social work or other things?
We would only know if they expressed that when we helped them with their exit plan. If they took classes while they're in, like we have agreements now with Chaminade University for an associate degree program. We have an agreement for a certificate program with WCC, and we also are exploring a program with LCC right now for an associate degree program as well for the offenders to participate in. But unless they expressly tell us what their plans are, we encourage them when they're in the educational programs and they complete the associate's degree, we tell them, don't make this the end, this is just the first step. Complete, continue on. But unless they specifically tell us what their plans are, we're not going to know what they're going to do once they get out. But we will provide a letter of support for them if they apply for some type of grant or some type of funding to help them continue their education.
Okay. And then when you say working with associate degree programs with the various community colleges, associate degree being like a general 2-year program?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Is that, one last question, is that process partnership codified anywhere or memorialized anywhere with the community colleges?
It's memorialized, with the community colleges, memorialized in a memorandum of agreement because they are state agencies. So there's no need for us to do a contract with them. Chaminade is a private university, and they receive funding from Pell Grant and other funding source. And we've done 3 graduations at Halava so far. We've graduated, if I'm not mistaken, over 20 male graduates with associate's degrees. The average class is probably 7 or 8.
Okay. And then you said the Chaminade program is funded by what?
I think it's funded by the Pell Grant and through Chaminade University. We sign off on the agreement. They would submit the letter for the grant, and we would endorse off on the letter that they would be our partner in this process.
Okay. Thank you. Members, any other questions? Representative Shimizu.
Director Johnson, thank you. Thank you, Chair. This bill is tasking the department to develop specifically for social work training as part of rehabbing the inmates. Excuse me. I guess my question is, what is already in place as far as an overall rehab program for inmates to take them from where they're at to a rehabilitated goal for discharge? Is there already a formal program that's kind of spelled out that's, excuse me, already in place that, I guess if it's in place, then this might be another component that could be added to that program? Could you kind of run me through that?
I'm going to pause on that question because you ask that's a very important question, and this goes to just the overall programs. And I would like you to just hold on that because I think we're going to try to design an informational briefing that allows more time and space. We're constrained right now by our hearing time and space, so let's wait on that question.
Okay.
Thank you,
Any
Chair.
other questions? All right, seeing none. Moving on to our last bill, House Bill 1197, relating to clinical psychology, which would authorize the department to use student education partnerships to increase the amount of mental health care providers in correctional facilities across the state. First up, we have comments from Director Johnson.
Good morning, Chair Bellotti, Vice Chair Remoto, members of the committee. I'm Tommy Johnson, the Director of the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. We do provide comments, and we appreciate the legislature's interest and support. The department has utilized student education partnerships for several years now through the Hawaii Residency Program, Queens Healthcare Group, and Hawaii Psychologist Internship Consortium, HIPAC. We have spent approximately $1 million annually for 2 full-time residents with a preceptor, 2 full-time postdoctoral psychologists, and 2 intern psychologists. Our HIPAC status was inactive, but we're going to restart that back up shortly. So we do have educational programs and opportunities with universities and agencies out there. The previous bill, this would be great for something like this from the previous bill, which we can go into if you'd like. In short, we could partner with the University of Hawaii. The legislature could allocate money to UH for this purpose, and then they could partner with us and DHS to provide training in the facilities for the people incarcerated. And then once they get out, if they don't finish it before they complete their sequential phasing program process, then they can complete it once they get out while they're on parole or once they complete their sentence.
Thank you. Testimony and support from Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission, Ms. Johnson.
Aloha. Once again, Kristen Johnson, Oversight Coordinator at the Oversight Commission. We stand in support of this bill and stand on our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Testimony in support from Hawaii Substance Abuse Coalition. Testimony from Mr. Andrew Crossland in support. We have testimony from our representative. Testimony from Office of Public Defender.
Deputy Public Defender in support. This is thankless work, dealing with some of the toughest people in our community. Many of the individuals that the Office of the Public Defender interacts with, they have schizoaffective disorder or bipolar disorder, and they need a range of interactive treatments, ranging from oral medication, intramuscular injections, all the way to ECT, electrifying the brain. These are pretty heavy-duty things that need a lot of monitoring and a lot of professional input for. So, of course, we would support this. We would like to direct this towards the county facilities, towards places like OCCC, Hilo Community Correctional Center, where there's a lack of this kind of treatment.
Thank you, Mr. Ganadin. Testimony and support from Ms. Moore, Veronica Moore. Support Chinara Casey Richmond. And any other testifiers in the room? Ms. Young.
Angela Melody Young testifying on behalf of Kapalama Neighborhood Security Walk, a grassroots movement of the official Honolulu Police Department. I'm a safety coordinator, and I was asked to provide testimony by the author of this legislation. So I didn't get to expand too much about this, so I don't want to assume, but I have a proposed amendment, if you'd consider, is that sometimes you have to be technical, so you would put included in the student education programs are such as the following, but not limited to licensed marriage, family therapist program, Master of Science in Marriage and Family Therapy program, and APRN and RN nurse program. So these are programs to provide the care appropriate in mental health facilities. So this expands the statutory provisions for students to practice with the supervision of a licensed professional. And this will provide within the clinical rotations for the medical students at the University of Hawaii to complete studies at OCCC. So the state's resources are burdened, and the inmates are suffering from mental illness and require specialized care that the facilities are not structured to support. So how do you get students to be more active? So with the internships, this is a really good idea. And, for the prior generation, I'm really thankful for the work and what they've done for building the facilities. In our generation, let's push these priorities forward so we can get more services and healthcare for inmates. Supply the system with practicing students trained and well equipped to make an impact. The students at the students with their experience and what they're experiencing at the University of Hawaii internships, I think it will really be a good career development workforce opportunity for the students. And also one last thing, I know we're, trying to keep it in sync and keep it short. So to go above and beyond the scope outline of this legislation, I'm just wondering if the community work is accomplished. You can put it in the bill, but are students going to be willing? You want to see a spike in career development workforce numbers in this industry, right? Students are committing to this career in clinical psychology. So I really believe in this legislation to set an unparalleled standard on the industry of psychology. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Any other testifiers in the room? Any other testifiers in Zoom? Members, any questions? I have a question. Representative Souza.
For Director Johnson. Thank you. You know, in your testimony, you mentioned that you guys are already doing student partnerships. You spent approximately $1 million annually. And then you specifically say that it was for residents with a preceptor, postdoctoral psychologist, intern psychologist, correct? Okay. So I'm a little confused. I'm not even sure what question to ask, just because the bill itself, it's kind of twofold. It talks about student education partnerships, and then it goes on to say that we're trying to, I guess, to expand clinical psychologists and mental health care providers. So I'm not sure, do you know what this bill is saying as far as who we're trying to hire as part of this collaboration? Because I want to make sure, and maybe this is just more of a comment, Chair. I'm not even sure if this is a question, but I want to make sure that we're actually specifically saying who we're hiring as part of this student partnership, just like how you did in your testimony. Yeah, are you clear on the language, I guess is my question to you?
Well, the language is vague, but the gist of what I got from this is the legislature, and we appreciate the interest, is trying to help us increase our mental health staffing in the facilities. Right now, if I'm not mistaken, we have 23 psychologist positions. How many are vacant? 20 of them are vacant. Part of the problem is, so we've hired private providers to come in, but one of the problems we have, and there's a bill in the Senate to address this issue, is there's a 2-year licensure requirement from the date we hire them. Senator Elefante's committee on the Senate side introduced a bill, and DCCA agreed. He initially wanted 10 years before they had to be licensed. We agreed that 5 years would be fair enough to try to get them licensed, because at the 2-year mark, if they're not licensed, we have to let them go. And so we're losing a lot. And the other thing, too, is corrections is not sexy. If you're a psychologist, one, if you look at the pay scale for the state, it's way too low. And two, if you can work in a clinical setting versus a sterile, rigid jail or prison, where would you go? Right. But for specific questions about our mental health and medical staff, I have our medical director here, Dr. Maura Tresh. She's here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just want to clarify, you have 26 positions, 20 are vacant.
We have 23 positions, 20 of them are vacant, around 20.
Okay, but then you said that you hire.
We hire locums through the
Locums.
contract we have.
And then
through
how
Ritchie.
many, what is the hiring, what is the number of locums you hire?
I will
Like-
bring up Dr. Tresh to answer that question.
Can you explain what a locum is?
So these are actually two separate positions. So the locums are actually for our psychiatrists. So the psychiatrists and the psychologists provide different services. So the psychiatry residency program that we work with, they're medical doctors that have graduated from medical school, are then in a psychiatry residency, and so they come during that residency and work under a preceptor psychiatrist, and then get to see our patients, rotate through, and can come back, and they usually do. Those psychiatrists, when they graduate from their residency and are practicing on their own, have come back and worked for us. So we have 2 that are hired on as state providers, and we have 2 that are locums for our 7 psychiatry positions that we have filled. So it's actually the majority that we have from the psychiatry residency program that we recruited from. As far as the psychology program, which is separate, they're going to school to do more of the counseling, not the treatment and the drugs. They're doing the treatment with the counseling and the therapy. That program hasn't been as successful, in part because we need to actually have the supervision from a licensed clinical psychologist there. So with us having as many vacancies as we do and their caseload being so large, they cannot then also take on the supervision. So the way that the psychiatry, the separate residency is structured is we actually pay Queens to use their staff psychiatrist to then precept our psychiatry residents. And that's part of why it's been really successful, because they don't have a caseload in the jail. So they're specifically at Oahu Community. So when they come in, the preceptor is there to see the patients with them, answer questions, make sure that they're comfortable, and then they're able to still see and take on their own patient panel and then grow with that and even come in as a first year, a second year, third year resident, and then decide if they want to continue employment with us. With the psychology one, where the psychologists are employed by us and are already overextended, they don't have the same ability. It's hard to continue with those students. And currently, we're losing another licensed clinical psychologist, so we only have one that could actually supervise right now. We cannot have one clinical psychologist for OCCC who is seeing that entire caseload, which is a revolving door, so it's not just a population of 1,000, it's actually more than that, and then also take on students to precept with. So if we had a better structure where we could either, also give funds to UH to utilize their preceptors, their licensed clinical psychologists, and then bring them in and do training in the same way we do with the psychiatry residency, we think it would be a lot more successful. Also, if we could actually pay the psychologists decently so that we could recruit more overall, they would then have the time to actually be able to precept the students.
Just a basic question. Locums are
Agency, so they're contract. Okay. So when we take on the locums, that's for any positions that we have vacant that we cannot fill with a state position.
Is it abbreviation, low comps?
I don't know if it is an abbreviation, but we have the locums, that's for specifically, the locums contract is only for physicians and physician assistants, I believe. So we don't have psychologists written into that. We have separate agency workers that we can hire for like nursing agency, but we don't have that for psychologists. So where we have these other pools where we can bring in travelers and attract them come to Hawaii, especially during the winter, we get like a lot of nurses that come in. We don't have a similar program like that for the psychologists, only for the psychiatrists, which we're now staffed largely with our locum psychiatrists. That still doesn't help us with that therapy and counseling piece we need from our psychologists.
Sorry, locum tenens is, I think it's Latin, I think. And it's used a lot in the healthcare setting, and it's when you have to basically bring in contract people because of the
So I actually came on as a locum. So I came here as a temporary job to get away from Chicago for 3 months, but then they hook you in, and then I decided to finally just be like, all right, fine, I'll do the state contract, and that's what we hope. I recruit locums, and then I just constantly am like, and we have these state positions, and that's how we bring people in. Because then it's scarier to think about going in when you've never been. When you bring someone in and they get to work temporarily, then they're able to see that it's not that scary. You find these people that are weirdly passionate about it, like myself, and you can't imagine doing anything else. But we don't have that venue for psychologists right now. We have it for our physicians. We have it for our nurses. We're able to keep them in, but doing something with the psychology students at least would give them a way to be introduced. And then especially if you can make it part of their curriculum, they're being exposed, and then we can kind of hopefully hook them in the future as well to work with the state.
Okay, one last follow-up question. Director Johnson, you mentioned that there's another bill moving in the Senate that kind of is talking about this issue for psychologists
Yeah, there is a bill in the Senate, and I apologize, I don't have the number with me, but what it did was it changes the statute from 2-year licensure requirement after employment to 5 years. It originally stated 10 years. DCCA agreed that 5 years would be amenable for them. So what that'll do is we don't have to let them go after 2 years, but it doesn't mean we're not going to stay on them to take the test. Every time they take the test is about $900-something. It's not cheap.
Okay.
And the test is very hard.
And this is a bill being carried by Senator Elefante for this specific
Issue, correct. But it will help DOH as well because they have the same issue we do.
Okay.
But I would like to say also, I recently decided that for every class of work where we're 20% vacancies or more, we're requesting DHERD allow us to do a shortage differential for those positions as a way to attract people. And we have about 30 classes of work that fall under that category.
What has DHERD's response been? You put in that request?
No, we just recently sent it, like within the last 4 days, we sent it in. So I'll talk to Brenna Hashimoto about that to make sure. I don't see it's a problem. As long as we have the money in the budget, it shouldn't be an issue. It's going to be how we monitor, make sure that once we hit a certain goal and we're there for a certain amount of time, then that shortage differential goes away.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, members, any other questions? All right, members, we're going to take a short recess so that we can assemble for decision-making. Short recess.
Which batches are we doing?
Okay, reconvening Committee on Public Safety, our 8:30 a.m. agenda for Friday, January 31st, 2025. Members, first up, House Bill 1062 relating to Hawaii National Guard. Chair's recommendation is to pass this with a defective date of July 1st, 2030. For further conversation, again, this is more of a housekeeping bill, members. Questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1062, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Hashem? Aye. Representative Ichiyama? Aye. Representative Lamasao is excused. Representative Morikawa?
Aye.
Representative Poi Poi? Representative Woodson is excused. Representative Shimizu? Aye. Representative Souza?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Members, moving on to House Bill 674. This is authorizing the payment for allowances for TRICARE dental and vision coverage for all of the officers of the Hawaii National Guard. Chair's recommendation is to pass this with HD1 with a defective date July 1st, 3000. Members, questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Okay, voting on HB 674. Chair's recommendation is to pass as with amendments. Noting the excused absence of Representative Woodson and joining us is Representative Lamasao. Are there any members voting no? Are there any members voting with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Members, House Bill 652, we had a very good discussion and lots of questions on veterans' rights and benefits and providers. Chair's recommendation is at this time is to defer this. There is another bill moving on the Senate side. We'll also continue to look at what other states are doing in this area, as well as get up to speed on what the federal authorities are in this matter. Any questions, comments, or concerns? All right, seeing none, House Bill 1058 relating to veteran cemeteries. Just want to make sure that there's no suggested amendments. Chair's recommendation is to pass an HD1 with a defective date and any text identified by our HMSO staff for consistency and style and clarity. Members, any comments or questions or concerns? All right, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1058, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative Woodson. Are there any members voting no? Are there any members voting with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, members, moving on to House Bill 503 relating to the Hawaii First Responders Memorial. There is a blank appropriation in this, members. I had a communication from Mr. Wood that the request for the appropriation is going to be $100,000. We'll put that into the committee report, add in a defective date, and any tech amendments to be identified by HMSO for consistency, clarity, and style. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
I just have concerns that money is tight.
All right, understood. Any other comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 503, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative Woodson. Are there any members voting no? Are there any members voting with reservations?
With reservations.
Thank you. Member Shimizu, voting with reservations. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
All right. Members, for House Bill 1502 relating to insurance, a lot of questions, a lot of testimony to provide a roadmap for some of these issues. Chair's recommendation is going to be to defer this to decision-making on Wednesday, February 5th, 2025, at our, I'm going to make it a 10:30 a.m. agenda. 10:30 a.m. agenda for decision-making. All right? Excuse me, let me scratch that. Not a 10:30 a.m. decision-making agenda. We'll do an 11 o'clock a.m. decision-making agenda for that. Okay. All right, that takes care of our 8:30 a.m. agenda. Members, moving to House Bill 10, moving to our 10 a.m. agenda. My recommendation is going to be for House Bill 1002, relating to the Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission. There's a lot of conversation in this, members. My recommendation is going to be to move this to end of the agenda for an 8:30 a.m. hearing agenda on Wednesday, February 5th, 2025. So there's a number of other bills that we're going to be hearing on that day. It's going to be placed on an 8:30 agenda. We will put this item at the end of that 8:30 a.m. agenda for decision-making only. Okay, moving to House Bill 677. Chair's recommendation for this bill is to pass with an HD1 and a defective date of July 1st, 3000. I do not believe there was any, we weren't in receipt of any amendments, members. Questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote on House Bill 677.
Voting on HB 677, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Noting the excused absence of Representative Woodson, are there any members voting no? With reservations, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, members, on House Bill 481 relating to offender reentry, and this was regarding a certificate for suitability for employment. Chair's recommendation is going to be to defer this measure. There's a lot of good conversation. The certificate of suitability may not be the appropriate kind of vehicle that's needed. We need to, but there certainly is a lot of work that can be done in workforce preparation, and so we'll continue to work with those ideas. But at this time, the certificate of suitability for employment is not really the right vehicle to be pursuing. So Chair's recommendation is to defer indefinitely. Relating to social work, House Bill 251, what we learned in this, members, is that it's likely not the Department of Correction and Rehabilitation that needs to be identified for this social work training program. But what I'd like to do is go back to the introducer of this bill. So I'm going to defer this to the 11 a.m. decision-making agenda on Wednesday, February 5th. Relating to clinical psychology, again, there was a lot of conversation here. There is another bill moving, Senate Bill 474. I'm going to defer this one also to decision-making 11 a.m. agenda for Wednesday, February 5th, 2025, so we can look at what's going on with Senate Bill 474, and I will consult with the introducer of this bill about how to move forward with it. Okay, members, moving on to the end of the 10 a.m. agenda relating to fire protection, 1064, House Bill 1064. This is concerning the Office of the State Fire Marshal. I received amendments, thank you, from Representative Ichiyama as well as from members of the community. I'm going to defer this to end of agenda of the 11 a.m. agenda on Wednesday, February 5th. Thank you. House Bill 673, Chair's recommendation is to move this one out with an HD1 and a defective date, and any tech amendments for consistency, clarity, of style. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Really, the key measure of this is the suspension of reporting, as well as the ability of the legislature to step in and end an emergency by vote, by a pretty high threshold of a 2/3 vote. Questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, members, Vice Chair, for the vote.
Voting on HB 673, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Noting the excused absence of Representative Woodson, are there any members voting no? Are there any members voting with reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Members, House Bill 1060 relating to emergency preparedness. Members, my recommendation is going to be this is the community readiness. Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead, members. House Bill 596 relating to emergency management, and this is a clarified definition for disasters and emergencies. Chair's recommendation for this is to insert a defective date, and there have been no texts identified. So we'll move this one forward. Members, questions, comments, or concerns? All right, Vice Chair for the vote.
Okay, voting on HB 596, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. And noting the excused absence of Representative Woodson, are there any members voting no? With reservations, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Members, for House Bill 1060, this is the bill about community readiness centers. Chair's recommendation is going to be defer this to February 5th at the 11 o'clock a.m. agenda. House Bill 883 relating to emergency management. Chair's recommendation is going to be hold on. Actually, for the remainder of this, House Bill 883, House Bill 357, and House Bill 353. Chair's recommendation is going to be to defer all of these measures indefinitely. There were a lot of conversations about what are the county's responsibilities, about the kinds of things that we can do to ensure strengthening existing hurricane shelters inventories, as well as provide grants to residents and condominium associations to fortify residential real property against hurricanes. Members, again, I'm going to defer these indefinitely. Again, there was a lot of good conversation, and I think we can follow up with these with resolutions, as well as further refining. For the last one in particular, House Bill 353, we have to further refine the language around being able to provide grants directly to low-income residents. I don't know that that's something that we can do. So for those reasons, House Bill 883, 357, and 353 are going to be deferred. Turning to House Bill 358, Chair's recommendation is going to be to defer this to, I'd like to continue to look at this one and defer this one to February 5th at 11 o'clock a.m. I think that takes care of all of our bills, members. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned.